They called it a war movie, but Halls of Montezuma didn't just recreate battle. It became one. Real Marines invaded the set. A star had a breakdown that changed everything. And one scene, they used live ammunition so close, the actors thought they were dying. These are 20 weird facts about Halls of Montezuma. And wait for the bonus, because there's a deleted ending so dark, the studio buried it for 70 years. Lock and load. This mission goes deeper than you think. Number 1. Richard Widmark didn't want to be a hero. After playing psychotic killers in Kiss of Death and Roadhouse, he'd built a reputation as Hollywood's most terrifying villain. Studio executives at 20th Century Fox saw dollar signs in his sneer and wanted to keep him dark, dangerous, typecast forever. But Widmark was suffocating. He told his agent he'd quit acting before playing another murderer, another thug, another lunatic with a gun and a death wish. So when the script for Halls of Montezuma landed on his desk, he saw salvation. Lieutenant Carl Anderson was different. A combat officer, yes. Battle-hardened, absolutely, but also vulnerable, haunted by memories, struggling with leadership and loss. It was a chance to show range, to prove he could carry a film without that twisted grin. The studio resisted. They wanted their monster. Widmark threatened to walk. He meant it. After tense negotiations and veiled threats about contract violations, Fox finally caved and Widmark stepped into combat boots, determined to bury his villain persona once and for all. What he didn't know was that the real battle wasn't in the script. It was waiting on location, where the heat, the explosions, and the ghosts of real war would push him closer to the edge than any character ever had. Number 2. Before cameras rolled, director Lewis Milestone had a problem. He'd won an Oscar for All Quiet on the Western Front, directed Of Mice and Men, and knew exactly how war should look on screen. Dark, chaotic, unforgiving. But Fox wanted something else. They wanted spectacle, technicolor explosions, heroic charges, the kind of sanitized combat that would pack theaters and sell war bonds. Milestone hated it. He'd seen the real thing, interviewed veterans, read after-action reports soaked in blood and bureaucracy. He knew war wasn't pretty, and he refused to lie. So he went rogue. During pre-production meetings, he nodded along with studio notes, agreed to their vision, promised exactly what they wanted to hear. Then he went to the Marine Corps and cut a secret deal. He'd use real Marines as extras, real equipment, real tactics, and in exchange, the Corps would help him shoot combat sequences the way they actually happened. No Hollywood Polish, no sanitized heroics, just chaos captured on film. The studio didn't find out until they saw the dailies. Footage so raw, so intense, so different from what they'd approved that executives panicked. Milestone smiled and kept shooting. Because once the film was half finished, what could they do? Reshoot everything? Fire an Oscar-winning director mid-production? They were trapped, and Milestone knew it. He'd hijacked their war movie and turned it into something real. Number 3. The casting of Jack Palance nearly destroyed the production before it started. Originally named Walter Palance, he'd survived a bomber crash during World War II that left his face partially burned and reconstructed through multiple surgeries. The scars weren't obvious, but they changed his features, gave him that angular, unsettling intensity that would later define his career. When he auditioned for Halls of Montezuma, Milestone saw something perfect. A face that had actually been to war. Eyes that had seen things they couldn't forget. But the studio saw a problem. They thought Palance looked too foreign, too intense, too unmarketable for a film celebrating American Marines. They pushed back hard, suggesting safer choices. Actors with conventional leading man looks and zero baggage. Milestone refused. He told Fox that if they wanted authenticity, Palance was non-negotiable. His presence alone would sell the horror of combat without a single word of dialogue. The arguments escalated. Producers threatened to replace Milestone. Milestone threatened to quit. Richard Widmark, still fighting his own battle for the lead role, stepped in and backed Milestone's choice. He'd seen Palance's screen test and knew the man had something rare, something you couldn't fake or teach. Finally, Fox surrendered, and Palance joined the cast. But the tension never fully disappeared. Throughout filming, studio representatives would visit the set, watch Palance work, and quietly suggest maybe they should consider reshoots with someone else. Milestone ignored every word and kept rolling. Number 4. They shot on location in Southern California, but it wasn't California they were filming. It was supposed to be a Pacific island, somewhere brutal and nameless, where Marines fought and died in mud and coral. The problem was obvious from day one. California looked nothing like the South Pacific. Wrong vegetation, wrong terrain, wrong light. But the budget couldn't afford a real tropical location, and backlot sets felt too artificial. So the production designer got creative and turned parts of Camp Pendleton into a war zone. They bulldozed sections of coastal scrubland, imported palm trees, hauled in tons of volcanic rock to simulate coral, built Japanese pillboxes and bunkers from concrete and steel. They rigged pyrotechnics everywhere, planted charges in the ground, wired detonators to simulate artillery impacts, mortar fire, and grenade blasts. It looked incredible on film, but it was also insanely dangerous. Live explosives everywhere, actors running through real fire, stunts coordinated with military precision but civilian safety standards. The Marines advising the production kept warning that something would go wrong, that someone would get hurt, that they were pushing too hard. Milestone heard them and pushed harder. He wanted chaos that felt real because anything less would betray the men who'd actually fought these battles. So they kept blowing things up, kept running actors through fire and smoke, kept gambling that luck would hold. And for most of the shoot, it did, until it didn't.
Often outnumbered, but never out.
Number 5. The explosion happened during a routine shot. Marines advancing across open ground, explosions detonating in sequence as they move forward, pyrotechnics timed to miss the actors by what the stunt coordinator called safe margins. Except one charge went off early. Not by much, maybe half a second. But in combat choreography, timing is everything. The blast erupted directly beneath 3 actors playing Marines. Real Marines serving as extras, throwing them into the air with the concussive force of actual artillery. The set went silent. Medics rushed in. Cameras stopped rolling. For several terrifying minutes, nobody knew if the men were alive. Miraculously, they survived. Bruised, burned, temporarily deaf, but alive. The studio wanted to shut down production immediately, investigate, assign blame, maybe even fire Milestone for reckless endangerment. But the injured Marines refused. They'd signed up for this, understood the risks, and told executives that real war was worse. If they could survive Tarawa and Iwo Jima, they could survive a movie set. Still, the incident changed everything. Insurance rates skyrocketed. Stunt coordinators demanded triple checks on every explosive. And Milestone, shaken but stubborn, ordered the explosion kept in the film. You can see it if you watch closely. The moment 3 men nearly died, preserved forever as entertainment. Because in halls of Montezuma, even the accidents felt too real to cut. Number 6. Jack Webb didn't just show up to act. He showed up with a notebook, a tape recorder, and questions that annoyed everyone. Fresh off his radio successes with Dragnet, Webb was obsessed with authenticity, with getting details right, with making sure every line of dialogue, every piece of equipment, every tactical decision made sense. He interviewed the Marine advisors constantly, asked about fire discipline, squad formations, radio protocols, the difference between covering fire and suppressive fire. Most actors treated the Marines as background decoration. Webb treated them as professors teaching a masterclass in survival. He rewrote his own dialogue multiple times, changing lines that felt too Hollywood, too dramatic, too divorced from how real Marines actually talked under fire. Milestone loved it. He encouraged Webb to keep digging, keep questioning, keep pushing for accuracy. But other actors found it exhausting. They were there to hit marks and say lines, not audit combat manuals. Tensions rose. Webb didn't care. He knew this film would define how audiences saw Marines for years, maybe decades, and he refused to get it wrong. His character, Sergeant Pete Conroy, became the moral center of the film, not through heroics, but through competence, through doing the job right, even when scared, tired, or surrounded. Webb's obsession paid off. Years later, Marines would tell him they'd watch Halls of Montezuma before deployment because it got the small things right. The way fear looked, the way orders sounded, the way men held together when everything fell apart. Number 7. The film's most controversial scene almost ended careers. Near the climax, Marines capture a Japanese soldier and interrogate him using methods that, even by 1951 standards, crossed lines. No torture shown explicitly, but the implication hung there, dark and heavy. Milestone shot it straight. No music, no dramatic angles, just men doing terrible things because war demanded it. When studio executives saw the footage, they panicked. This wasn't heroic. This wasn't the narrative they wanted. Americans didn't torture prisoners. We were the good guys, the liberators, the moral authority. Except, the scene was based on real interrogations described in Marine Corps after-action reports. It happened. Veterans knew it happened. And Milestone argued that sanitizing it would be a bigger lie than showing it. The battle moved to the editing room. Executives demanded cuts. Milestone refused. They threatened to shelve the entire film. Milestone reminded them about the budget already spent, the publicity already building, the premiere already scheduled. They were trapped again. Finally, a compromise. The scene could stay, but with modifications. Shorter, less explicit, with dialogue added suggesting the interrogation yielded crucial information that saved American lives. The justification felt hollow, a fig leaf covering uncomfortable truths. But it allowed the film to proceed. When Halls of Montezuma premiered, that scene generated more conversation than anything else. Some veterans praised it for honesty, others condemned it as propaganda. Milestone never commented publicly, but privately he told friends the modified version was a betrayal, not of the studio, but of the men who'd lived it. Number 8. Richard Widmark broke down during filming, and nobody saw it coming. He'd been solid throughout production, professional, focused, nailing take after take without complaint. Then came a scene near the end, his character sitting alone after a failed assault, surrounded by dead Marines, staring at nothing. Simple scene, minimal dialogue, mostly reaction shots. They rehearsed once, set up the cameras, called action. Widmark sat there, cameras rolling, and nothing happened. He just stared, blank, frozen. Milestone called cut, asked if he was ready. Widmark nodded. They rolled again. Same thing. Blank stare, no emotion, no performance. After the third failed take, Milestone walked over quietly, asked if Widmark needed a break. That's when the dam broke. Widmark started shaking, couldn't stop, tears streaming down his face, gasping for air like he'd been underwater. He kept apologizing, saying he didn't know what was wrong, that he was fine, completely fine. But he wasn't fine. Something about playing a man watching people die, surrounded by silence and smoke, had cracked something open. The production shut down for the day. Widmark disappeared to his trailer. Milestone sent everyone home. The next morning, Widmark returned. He looked exhausted but steady. They set up the same scene again. This time, when cameras rolled, Widmark delivered the most devastating performance of the film. Raw, broken, barely holding together. That moment of collapse, that unplanned breakdown, gave the scene a weight nothing scripted could match. Milestone never asked what happened. Some doors, once opened, don't need explaining. Number 9. The film's technical advisor was a Marine colonel who'd actually commanded troops at Tarawa, one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific. His name was David Shoup, and he didn't suffer fools. When he first read the script, he threw it across the room and told Fox it was Hollywood nonsense written by people who'd never smelled gunpowder. But the studio needed him. They needed his credibility, his approval, his signature on documents saying Halls of Montezuma accurately represented Marine Corps operations. So they gave him power, real power. Any scene involving tactics, weapons, or combat procedures had to pass through Shoup first. He vetoed dozens of ideas. Too dramatic, too stupid, too likely to get Marines killed if anyone took it seriously. He rewrote entire sequences, arguing with Milestone about camera angles because certain positions would expose flanks. He demanded actors learn actual Marine Corps drill, hand signals, and radio discipline. Most directors would have fought back, protected their vision, ignored the military guy trying to turn art into a training film. Milestone embraced it. He gave Shoup authority to stop filming if something looked wrong, and Shoup used it constantly. Production slowed to a crawl as he corrected everything from how rifles were carried to how orders were given under fire. Actors grew frustrated. Shoup didn't care. Years later, after retiring as Commandant of the Marine Corps, and winning the Medal of Honor, Shoup would say Halls of Montezuma was the only war film he could watch without throwing things at the screen. High praise from a man who'd seen hell and survived it. Number 10. They use live ammunition. Not everywhere, not constantly, but during certain long shots where actors were distant enough that real bullets added authenticity without excessive risk. The stunt coordinator, a veteran himself, argued it was the only way to capture genuine suppressive fire, the way dirt actually kicked up when rounds hit, the way men instinctively ducked when metal screamed overhead. Insurance companies said absolutely not. Studio lawyers said absolutely not. Milestone and Colonel Shoup said it was happening anyway. They established strict protocols, real Marines handling the weapons, not Hollywood armorers. Spotters everywhere with authority to stop filming if anyone crossed into the danger zone. Limited ammunition loads, verified before every take. And still, the risk was enormous. One mistake, one ricochet, one actor who zigged instead of zagged, and someone died. The actors knew. They were told explicitly that during specific sequences, live rounds would be fired over their heads. Albeit some refused to participate, understudies took their places. But others, including Widmark and Palance, volunteered. They wanted that edge, that genuine fear that you couldn't fake. When cameras rolled and bullets cracked overhead, the performances changed. The terror was real. The instinct to stay low, to move fast, to pray nothing went wrong, that was all genuine. Later, when the film premiered, veterans in the audience commented that it felt right. The sounds, the movements, the fear. For once, a war movie didn't feel like a movie. It felt like memory. And nobody mentioned the live ammunition because admitting it might have killed the entire production. Number 11. The beach landing sequence nearly killed the entire cast. Milestone wanted it shot in real ocean conditions. Real waves, real current, no pool, no controlled environment, just Marines hitting the surf under fire the way it actually happened. They chose a stretch of California coast known for rough water, built camera platforms, rigged explosives along the shoreline, and loaded landing craft with actors in full combat gear. What nobody properly calculated was the weight. 60 pounds of equipment per man, weapons, ammunition, radio gear, all soaking up seawater the moment they hit the surf. The landing craft dropped its ramp. Marines charged out. And instantly, 3 men went under. The weight dragged them down. Waves crashed over them. And panic spread through the ranks. Cameras kept rolling because Milestone didn't realize what was happening. By the time someone yelled for help, divers were already in the water, pulling men up, cutting away gear, fighting the current. All 3 survived, coughing up salt water, terrified but alive. Production shut down. Executives flew in from Los Angeles. This was it, the disaster everyone had predicted, but the Marines who'd been saved insisted on finishing the scene. They'd signed up for this. They understood the risks, and walking away felt like failing a mission. So after safety protocols were completely rebuilt, they went back into the water. The beach landing in Halls of Montezuma looks chaotic because it was. Every flinch, every desperate struggle to stay upright, that was real men fighting real ocean while explosions detonated around them. Number 12. Reginald Gardner, a British comedy actor cast as a war correspondent, hated every second of filming. He'd built a career on witty dialogue and sophisticated humor, not crawling through mud while explosions shook his kidneys. But the paycheck was good, and the role seemed easy until he arrived on set and discovered Milestone ran it like an actual military operation. Early call times, physical demands, hours spent in the heat wearing heavy costumes. Gardner complained constantly. The food was terrible. The conditions were primitive. Why couldn't they shoot on a soundstage like civilized people? Other actors ignored him. Marines mocked him. Milestone told him to quit if he couldn't handle it. But Gardner stayed, miserable and vocal about it. Then something shifted. During a night shoot, pinned down during a simulated artillery barrage, Gardner looked around at the Marines, at the actors covered in dirt and fake blood, at the sheer commitment to making something honest. And he got it. This wasn't just a movie, it was a memorial. After that night, Gardner stopped complaining. He still hated the conditions, but he understood why they mattered. His performance changed too. Less theatrical, more grounded, more present. When the film wrapped, Gardner admitted it was the hardest job he had ever done, and the only one he was genuinely proud of. Number 13. The film's score almost destroyed the entire production during post-production. Sol Kaplan, a respected composer, delivered a bombastic, heroic soundtrack full of swelling strings and triumphant brass. It sounded exactly like every other war movie, exactly like what Fox wanted. Milestone listened once and rejected it completely. He told Kaplan the music was lying, turning horror into adventure, death into glory. They needed something different, something that acknowledged the cost. Kaplan was furious. He delivered what was contracted, what the studio approved, what audiences expected. But Milestone wouldn't budge. He threatened to release the film with no score at all, just ambient sound and silence. The standoff lasted weeks. Finally, Kaplan agreed to start over, but only if Milestone would stop interfering, stop second-guessing every choice. They compromised. Kaplan would write a new score, quieter, more somber, less triumphant, and Milestone would trust him to find the right tone. What emerged was something unusual for 1951, a war film score that mourned more than it celebrated. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Some called it too depressing, others praised it for honesty. But the score became one of the film's most distinctive elements, a reminder that victory carried weight. Number 14. Robert Wagner, in one of his earliest roles, almost quit acting because of this film. He played a young Marine, barely any lines, mostly background work. But Milestone demanded the same intensity from extras as he did from leads. Wagner was exhausted, overwhelmed, questioning whether he had what it took. During a particularly brutal day of filming, covered in mud, ears ringing from explosions, Wagner broke down and told a production assistant he was done, finished, going back to regular jobs. The assistant grabbed Richard Widmark, who found Wagner sitting alone, ready to walk. Widmark didn't give him a pep talk. He told him the truth. Acting was brutal. This film was brutal. War was brutal. And if Wagner couldn't handle fake war, that was fine. But he shouldn't quit on a bad day. He should quit on a good day when he could think clearly. Then Widmark walked away. Wagner stayed. He finished the shoot. And years later, after becoming a major star, Wagner would say that conversation saved his career. Not because Widmark inspired him, but because Widmark treated him like an adult, capable of making hard choices.
Try to take those hills, Colonel, the whole battalion.
Number 15. The studio and Milestone had their biggest fight over the film's depiction of officers. Fox wanted clear heroes, strong leaders who made tough calls and inspired men to greatness. Milestone showed officers as human, flawed, struggling with impossible decisions. Sometimes wrong, sometimes paralyzed by fear disguised as caution. One scene in particular caused massive friction. An officer makes a tactical error that costs lives, and instead of the film punishing him or showing redemption, it just moves on. Men died because someone miscalculated, and the war continued. Fox demanded changes. Show the officer learning, show consequences, show something that made narrative sense. Milestone refused. That's how war worked. Mistakes happened, people died, and the machine kept grinding. No lessons learned, no character arcs completed, just loss and continuation. The studio threatened to re-edit the film without Milestone's involvement. Milestone threatened to remove his name and publicly disavow the project. Both sides had lawyers on standby when Richard Zanuck, head of production, stepped in. He'd seen combat in the Pacific. He knew Milestone was right. The scene stayed as filmed, and the studio's marketing department had to figure out how to sell a war movie that didn't promise easy answers or comfortable heroes. Number 16. Jack Palance's intensity terrified the other actors. Between takes, he'd stay in character, pacing, muttering to himself, lost in whatever dark place his role required. Some thought it was method acting pretension. Others recognized it as something else. A man wrestling with memories that refused to stay buried. One day, filming a scene in a makeshift field hospital, Palance froze mid-take. He was supposed to react to a wounded Marine, but instead, he just stared, statue still, barely breathing. Milestone called, "Cut." Palance didn't move. The set medic approached carefully, spoke quietly, eventually guided Palance away from the cameras. He didn't return for the rest of the day. Later, someone who'd served with Palance in the Air Force explained. The field hospital setup, the smell of the fake blood. Something triggered a memory. A real hospital, real wounded, real screams. When Palance returned the next day, he apologized to no one and offered no explanation. They finished the scene in one take, and what made it to the screen was a man barely holding himself together, which was exactly what the role needed. Nobody asked him about it again because some wars never really end, even when you survive them. Number 17. The film's premiere turned into a protest. Veterans groups picketed outside the theater, not because the film was inaccurate, but because they thought any war film was propaganda, a tool to make the next generation think combat was manageable, survivable, maybe even glorious. They carried signs, shouted at arriving guests, handed out flyers listing the real costs of war, the suicide rates, the broken marriages, the men who came home but never really left the battlefield. Studio executives panicked. This was supposed to be a patriotic celebration, not a political incident. But Louis Milestone walked outside, talked to the protesters, listened to their stories. Then he invited them inside to watch the film. About half accepted. They sat in the back, arms crossed, ready to hate it. When the lights came up, several were crying. One veteran approached Milestone and said simply, "You got it right. Thank you for getting it right." The protest dissolved. Some veterans became the film's most vocal supporters, recommending it not as entertainment, but as education, a way to show civilians what they'd missed, what they could never fully understand. The studio tried to capitalize on this, but Milestone shut it down. This wasn't a marketing opportunity. It was a moment of recognition between people who'd been there and someone who'd tried, imperfectly, to bear witness. Number 18. Nobody expected Holes of Montezuma to become a training tool, but it did. The Marine Corps started showing it to officer candidates, not for tactical instruction, but for leadership lessons. How do you command men when resources are limited, intelligence is wrong, and casualties are mounting? The film didn't provide answers, but it asked the right questions. It showed the weight of command, the impossible choices, the guilt that comes from survival when others don't make it. Military instructors would pause the film, discuss decisions characters made, debate alternatives, acknowledge that in real combat, there often weren't good options, just less terrible ones. This continued for years, quietly, without publicity. The studio never knew their expensive war film was being used in classrooms at Quantico. Milestone found out decades later and called it the greatest compliment his work ever received. He hadn't made a movie to entertain. He'd made one to remember, to teach, to ensure that future leaders understood the gravity of sending people into harm's way. That the film succeeded as both entertainment and education, that was the real victory. Number 19. The deleted ending was brutal. In the theatrical version, the film ends with survivors marching forward, mission accomplished, losses mourned but purpose intact. But Milestone shot another version, a longer ending where the camera pulls back to reveal how few Marines remain, how decimated the unit has become. No music, no dialogue, just men walking through devastation toward another objective, another battle, another chance to die. Test audiences hated it. They called it depressing, nihilistic, unpatriotic. Studio executives agreed. America needed heroes, not reminders that war consumed people endlessly. The ending was cut. Milestone argued but ultimately accepted defeat on this one. He'd won too many other battles to die on this hill. But he kept a copy of the original ending, and years later, he'd show it to film students, to veterans, to anyone who wanted to understand his real vision. The film they'd seen in theaters was a compromise. This was the truth. War doesn't end when the credits roll. It just finds new victims. Number 20. Richard Widmark never watched the finished film. He attended the premiere, sat through the screening, and walked out during the applause without speaking to anyone. Later, he told friends he couldn't watch it, couldn't separate the performance from the experience, couldn't see the character without remembering the breakdown, the fear, the moments when fiction came too close to something real. He was proud of the work, proud of what they'd created, but watching it felt like reopening wounds that had barely closed. For the rest of his career, Widmark would discuss Halls of Montezuma in interviews, praise the cast and crew, but always deflect when asked about his own performance. It was too personal, too close. Acting is lying in pursuit of truth, and sometimes the truth costs more than you expect to pay. Bonus fact: the film's prop master kept one item from the set that nobody noticed was missing: a dog tag worn by an extra, a real Marine who'd served at Guadalcanal and survived. After filming wrapped, the Marine left it behind, either forgotten or deliberately abandoned. The prop master tried to return it, but the Marine had already rotated out, gone back to civilian life, disappeared. So the prop master kept it, carried it for decades, and eventually gave it to the Smithsonian with a note explaining its origin. A real veteran's identification, worn in a fake war, now preserved as history. Because Halls of Montezuma blurred those lines constantly, mixed real and artificial until you couldn't separate them. The film wasn't just about Marines. It was made by Marines, advised by Marines, and ultimately, it belonged to them. Not as entertainment, but as memory given form.